Waves, powered by Sterling Bank.
Studio guys.
The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news,
Mics are up.
in-depth
Studio's
analysis
live.
of national current affairs.
I invest where money never sleeps.
Good morning, Lagos, and thank you for joining us in time for Freshly Pressed 981. It is where we bring you detailed analysis of the newspaper stories this morning. And joining us to do justice to these stories, we have Cheta Nwaeze. Good morning, Cheta.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Cheta can be found on Twitter as Chickster, that's CHXTA. And not forgetting Justin Ijeh, who's stepping in this morning. Hello, Justin.
Morning, people.
You can find him on Twitter at Justin EJ as a Justin EJ. And Lagos, here's how you can send in your messages.
Send to WhatsApp on 0809 That's 0809 You can also tweet at us at Smooth981FM and use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981.
We're streaming live on YouTube, so to find us on YouTube, just type Smooth981FM in the search box, subscribe, and send in messages using the live chat option.
That's right. Right, we go on to our first story for this morning on election matters. This one is from the Guardian newspaper. Justin, I'll come to you first. Okorocha's name missing on INEC's list of senators elect. I would allow you to go through the details. Of course, we heard what happened in Imo State, but please let us go through the details for us, Justin.
Okay, so in his response to being held, to one of the coalition officers being held under duress.
Yeah, well, announcing the results under duress.
Yes,
Yeah.
announcing the results under duress. Yeah. The NEC chairman has basically said that any place where such a thing happens, INEC will not reward such behavior by announcing the beneficiary as the winner of the election. So, Mr. Okorocha of Imo State is therefore not going to be. His name has been taken off the INEC website of officers, of people who they are going to give a certificate of return for. Yeah, specifically in the story, it tells us that Okocha, who was declared the senator-elect for Imo West Senatorial District, having polled 97,000 votes to beat Jones Onyerere of PDP, who polled 63,000 votes, followed by Senator Osita Izunaso of the APC, of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, rather APGA, with 30,000 votes. But Professor Innocent Ibauchi, who was a coalition officer, claimed that he had declared the APC candidate the winner over PDP's Onyere under duress.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have in this story. If Okorocha were here, he would summarize it in one word.
Yeah.
Iberibeism.
All right, now away from Iberi, it's such a tongue twister. But I wanted to ask you. So, where do we go from here? Can the INEC, despite the fact that according to reports, the people gave him the mandate to represent them in Imo West, can they deny him this right and privilege that the Imo State?
According to reports from where? From who?
No, I mean no. So they've given him. So he won the election.
Yeah, but there are rules to the game.
Yeah,
Brigandry will not be rewarded. If it is true that you held
at the point of where he jacked the electoral officer, he was actually behind. The electoral officer called INEC head coalition center, and what they essentially told him was, "Guys, save your life. You understand? Just declare this, and we'll handle it from here."
Okay.
So
now,
the issue now, which is now a legal issue, is that there's really no provision for that declaration under duress, which is what Rochas' lawyers are trying to argue.
Okay.
Yeah, but nevertheless, the fact is, if I mean, there's a reason why, for example, in Ungo Okpala on a consistent basis, they kept attacking coalition units and all of that. And this is something that we will look at in other stories,
Yeah.
where the attacks moved from actual attacks. So the nature of the attacks, because it's something that, I mean, this is something we were running observation for election monitors and providing analysis, and so I can tell you that the nature of attacks was different based on what the objective that wanted to be achieved.
Okay.
So in Rochacha's own case, or in Rochacha's case, you had a lot of attacks on collation units in order to try and I'm trying to find the right word here, in order to try and remove votes from his opponents.
Okay.
See,
So would INEC, now the question I just want to ask them straight on is, would INEC then, would there be a rerun of the election in that area, or would it just be, because we've seen a number of inconclusive states following the gubernatorial elections, would there be a run of elections, or would it...
what INEC is trying to do, the inconclusive for the most part is in the gubernatorial, which is a different election. But what INEC is trying to push, which I support them totally for, even though I'm very, very unhappy with them, and I've told them what they're trying to push in Richard's case is for him to be removed completely. I mean, that kind of behavior is extremely uncivilized, and that's just me being charitable.
I guess we'll hear the decision by INEC pretty soon, so we'll find out really where this takes us.
It will get to the courts.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Wanted to clarify that. The second story here from the Guardian newspaper, Cheta, I would come to you. Foreign observers back Oase's electoral reforms on prosecution of polls offenders. I think it was about a week or two ago that we spoke about details of the Oase's recommendation as it came back in the news following the recent elections. What's your take on this one, Cheta?
Well, personally, and based on what I saw as someone who observed the election closely, this thing is about incentives. So, and that's a Nigerian story in general. So, of most of the 278 unique incidents that we escalated, I mean, it's important to note there were way more than 278 incidents that happened during the course of the elections. That's both presidential and gubernatorial. But the ones that we escalated, that this needs urgent attention, most of those were attacks on election materials, while attacks on individuals tended to be either just before elections or after elections. In some cases, reprisal attacks. So in the presidential elections, most of the attacks on individuals were pre-elections, just kind of like to prevent people from voting. While in the gubernatorial, especially in the southwest, most of the attacks that happened, especially in Oyo, were reprisal attacks. The nature of the violence, the nature of things that happened, is important for us to start taking all of that into account. And it's important for us to start having those conversations, because it is clear that our electoral process needs reforms. Many of the attacks were done by people, especially in Rivers, were done by people in military uniform, in which the insignias of their units have been removed, or their name tags were not there. So they cannot be identified in many of those cases. So I think that the driver for all of this is the incentive of political office. Political office in this country is just too much of a magnet for all the bad characters. So I'm not a fan of the idea of having a different set of laws for electoral offenses and a different set of laws for normal offenses. You kill a man, you kill a man. It's the same ballpark. So what we need to do is strengthening our institutions, our ability to catch individuals, and then of course strengthen our identity management system, because if we have proper identification system and all of that, then so there was something that the new Inspector General of Police did before the election, which was a great help, which unfortunately the army failed to cooperate, but we'll talk about the army much later. You see, what he did was he made available the names and numbers of all the police commissioners that had been deployed and where they were deployed to. So it was easy to reach them. Army, no cooperation.
Okay.
Different story.
I guess that's a response to what the senior fellow at CDD, Professor Jim Ibrahim, had recalled, that the Oase's Electoral Reform Committee had asked for special courts, almost like Electoral Offences Commission, to try electoral offenders separately and to expedite the process.
Again, personally, I think that separate stuff for electoral. I mean, one of the reasons why we have this huge backlog of cases. Yeah, this is my opinion. One of the reasons we have this huge backlog of cases in the court thoughts is that because we have special election tribunals and all of that nonsense, once it's time for election, pretty much every other thing stops and everybody's just talking, is just doing politics. And this goes on for, so they have the Electoral Act reform helped to try to compress that into 90 days, but not everything is solved in 90 days. So there's a backlog. So when we talk about the glacial pace of our legal system, these are things that contribute to it.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
MI from Akoka said, from WhatsApp says, INEC is really putting their foot down on sharp electoral practices to remove the name of a man of such stature or Okorocha is a very bold move. A mandate must be gotten via democratic means, not through acts of Iberiberism. Now, Vincent from Ibejuleki says, on Okorocha's case, this can simply be described as the rise and fall of Iberiberism in Imo State. Well done, INEC, Vincent says. And BT says, Imo politics. Rocha's lawyer's argument on declaration of results under duress holds no water. To counter it, INEC alone grants certificates after elections, so no certificate, no victory. Imolites have spoken.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Justin, not going back on plan to sync NIN with passport Nigerian government. It's a great thing that Cheta talked about identification and ways to identify. Would you take us through that story, please?
Okay, so this one gladdens the heart. I'm glad to hear that the design of the whole national identity database is being taken seriously and being implemented. So you will recall that we had spoken about it here 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And at the time, the immigration service had announced that they were suspending issuance of the new 10-year e-passport. So what they're basically saying in this story is they're sticking to the initially advised timeline, which was April 29. They had moved it from 4th of March to April 29. And the reason why they made that postponement was to allow for the integration of their systems, that's between the National Identity Management Commission and the National Immigration Service, the Nigerian Immigration Service. So they're basically saying Mr. Babandede, the Controller General of the NIS, Mohammed Babandede, said that they're sticking to that timeline, and Nigerians must have the NIN before they can apply for the new 10-year tenor passport. That's the bottom line of this story.
All right, thank you very much. Just one question from there. How realistic is this for Nigerians for as many Nigerians as want to obtain their passports to have their NIN? Because we know we still have a bit of challenge when it comes to everyone being, given the NIN.
Actually, no. So you need to draw a distinction between the NIN and the national ID card.
Okay.
So when you do the registration, which is you go there, fill out the forms online or physically, and they capture your biometrics, you get your NIN immediately. There's no deferred process, right? The NIN is issued, and the NIN is the most important. It's the core of the whole system. It's the most important part, and you get it immediately. You get the slip printed. If not immediately, maybe you're told to come back in 24, 48 hours. But that's not given to you. That's different than the NID, Cheta.
Yes.
I understand. I mean, the NID, I happen to know some of the challenges they have printing the, but what you need more importantly is the NIN.
It's a number.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Fine. This one here, Cheta. UTME jam bans ATM cards, watches, key holders. Straightforward story in the Punch newspaper. Can you just please highlight a few of these items as been reported?
What was the point of highlighting? They also said that they're introducing CCTV cameras to send jam centers nationwide, and that's where the whole thing gets laughable. I mean, how practical is it to introduce a CCTV at a jam center in Bujoba where they've not seen light for 6 years? I mean, those are
generators, maybe. Did I offend you by saying that?
There was silence.
As I was saying before I was really interrupted. See, while the spirit of the idea is it's a response to challenges that are experienced with the advent of technology and all of that. There are better ways of solving this, and so JAMB should think of personally, I think JAMB should be scrapped, but that's another debate entirely. JAMB should think of transitioning to something like the open book test model, where if these exams are properly set, you can have all the spy materials that you want. It no go work. when I was doing my masters, these tests that we were frightened of the most were open book tests because you're allowed to bring everything.
Answer the question.
Answer the question. Now. It's not hard. Anyway, now the what I want to address is this Nigerian mindset of bans for everything. There are multiple studies that show that bans don't necessarily work. Using the American prohibition as an example, when they banned alcohol, the thing simply went underground and more people got drunk. Using our own current experience, we've banned the importation of rice, but we're still smuggling rice at higher levels. So both examples failed spectacularly. I'll quote the American social scientist Biju Dominic here. Bans tend to serve the immediate benefits of the proponents. However, because it's a clear display of right intentions. However, what they do is that they generate a psychological reactance, and human beings hate to lose any freedom. Whenever people believe that their freedom is being threatened, they enter into reactance motivational states and act to regain that freedom.
So, I mean, don't you think this might apply for a temporary measure?
Like I said, it serves the immediate. But then long term, what's the effect? So as you ban this thing, so for the next jump and maybe for the next 2 jumps, yes. But by the time you have the jump in 4 years time, 5 years time, people would have found ways around it.
And the list will go on and on
and on.
All right, so let's move on to the next story. This one is from Daily Times. Federal government arraigns Dino Melaye for the 12th time in 1 year. It's a few days after he recorded the victory at the polls to return to the Senate. The senator representing Kogi West, Dino Melaye, was arraigned again yesterday before Federal Capital Territory High Court in Maitama on allegations, part of which it would be resisting police arrest. But Justin, take us through the story, please.
Well, we all know about Dino and his run-ins with the federal government and the federal police. This is yet another installment. Now that he has been re-elected, you would have thought that he would heave a sigh of relief. His very close associate, incidentally, had lost his office in the Senate, so it's going to be very interesting to see how things play out differently this time for Mr. Dino, Senator Dino. But what interests me in this story, you would recall that the charges proffered against him were resisting arrest after the police had laid siege on his house for
in December.
In December, yes. Now it states here that, but this Monday, the federal government took over the case and amended the charges initially preferred against the lawmaker to include, now listen to this carefully, speaking to journalists and making tweets on his social media handles while in hiding.
So there comes my question. How is that categorized as a crime?
That's exactly what I scribbled in my side note here. Is this a crime? I don't understand how you amend how you take someone and charge him for speaking to John. Are you curtailing his freedom of expression? Even if he's hiding from the police, he's still free to speak. Whether he's speaking to journalists or he's speaking to his mother, nobody cares. But I don't understand how that could be a crime. I'm trying for the sake of my own sanity to say to myself, to convince myself that, okay, this is an error in the reportage. Okay, this journalist has goofed here. Because if this is true, then
because the way the story is being told, right from when it started, it seems as if it's as though it's Dino against the federal government or the federal government against Dino. But shouldn't the focus be on if you commit a crime, you serve time, or there are court processes to this? Questions.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because if indeed it is admitted, then it sets a whole new precedent with regards to what people can do. And like you mentioned, very critical freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and that's a whole different ballgame there.
I mean, it's just the comical nature of it all, because seriously, this can't stand. If you take such a charge, I'm not a lawyer, but if you took such a charge before a judge in court, I mean, you would need to reference some codified
Precedents.
law.
Mm.
No, before I even get to
Even
president, some
precedents.
codified law needed to have been broken.
Right.
What law did he break? Was there a gag order on him issued by a court?
Was
that
he
shouldn't
remanded
talk?
at a
Was
time
he-
where he was, restricted from using mobile services?
Yeah, how do you say, including
to...
speaking to journalists and making tweets? Anyway, just another day on these streets.
Thank you, Justin. Let's move on to the next story from the Guardian newspaper. Ishaku imposes dusk to dawn curfew in Taraba State. So the Taraba State governor, the Hassan, actually the chief press secretary to the governor, Hassan Bijua, made the statement yesterday saying that the governor, Darius Dixon Ishaku, had imposed a curfew to run between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. daily. It said is to make sure that everywhere is sane. It's just an antecedent from electoral violence and some other, shaky situations happening in Taraba State. But Cheta, take us through the details of the story, because I feel like there's something underlying in this that we're not seeing yet.
No, the thing is, Taraba is one of those states that has quite a bit of violence, and it's those slow burning violence. And one of the difficulties that we had with Taraba is that Taraba is it tends to be a day behind the news cycle. So nonsense will happen in Taraba now, and we don't get to hear of it until the next day, or generally there was a 12-hour lag at least. Now, on election day presidential, 4 people were killed in Taraba. I forget the name of the local government. Well, on election day gubernatorial, 1 person was killed. These are the ones that were verified. We had more reports. There were 8 verified incidents on both election days in Taraba, and one of them during the gubernatorial election. And I suspect that's the reason why Darius Ishaku declared a curfew. One of them was snowballed into an ethnic incident, because what happened was that money was shared coincidentally in front of the government house, and somebody tried to play fast one on another person in terms of sharing the money, and it quickly devolved into a case of Mumuye. There's an ethnic group called Mumuye. Mumuye boys versus Hausa boys fighting, and the Mumuye boy got stabbed and he later passed away. So we have to,
In front of the government house.
it started in front of the government house, and then it moved on. So from what started with knives eventually got to a point where they were shooting at each other. But we've not been able. There are allegations of more deaths which we've been unable to verify. The bottom line is, again, it comes down to all of this impunity. Some personally was, so this is away from Taraba. Someone I know personally happens to be in a polling unit in Oyo State when they shoot Sugar, the former House of Reps guy that died. He was shot and he died on Sunday night.
Wow.
So you have these issues, and nobody is even hauled in for interrogation. So the message it passes to those people is, do it again.
So the actions of the governor, how does this stem the rising tide of violence in that area?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Thank you, Cheta.
Thank you. Now, Yinkos on WhatsApp says, just to clarify the NIN discussion, you don't get NIN immediately. You get a slip printed with a tracking number on the spot. Timeline to get the slip with NIN has no bounds. I got mine after over 2 months, despite their promise I'll get it for 2 weeks. Yet I did mine in the VIP lounge of a leading bank. So just some challenges identified there. So sometimes the process starts.
Let him
smoothly,
just use that to
then-
tell us that he's a VIP. Okay.
All
Does he have siren?
Now, banned by JAM, you have to work on the human element. If you put CCTV, who mans it? Humans. If they're corrupt, they report nothing, and you just wasted money for nothing. Big T right there.
And then Danny sent in a message. It says, it's not enough to remove Rochas's name. I hope an appropriate charge will be brought against him. He should be locked up for a long time.
He's falling
That's what
out of
Danny
favor.
says.
He will face the full wrath of the law.
All right, let's still talking polls. Let's move on to this next story. Actually, looking at the judiciary, the next, looking in the details of this story, Justin, the Code of Conduct Tribunal has ruled that the trial of the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onoga, continues on a daily basis. They made a decision after deciding that the application challenging the jurisdiction in the matter be reserved till the end of the hearing. What are your thoughts on this move?
Again, disclaimer, I'm a lawyer. I'm just an ordinary man. So sometimes these issues are beyond me, But I don't know how it is okay that you have a case before you, and there is a motion challenging your jurisdiction to hear the matter, and your response to that is, well, we're going to hear the matter and we'll address the issue of jurisdiction at the end of hearing. And then the defense lawyer is reminding you that there is a similar case, right? That's the Justice Nguta case, who was also accused of something criminal and was taken to court. And the appeal court eventually ruled that he was discharged and acquitted, because the appeal court ruled that, listen, the first place where this guy should have been taken to was the NJC. Constitutionally,
which is similar, like you pointed out.
Yeah,
in this case.
it's a mirror image of the same case. And Mr. Onole's lawyer is pointing this out, and the tribunal team is saying, we've decided that we're going to hear the matter, and we will take the issue of jurisdiction after hearing all the issues on the case at the end of the day. Well, the Nigerian judiciary itself is on trial, as far as I'm concerned.
Why do you say so?
The very
It's obvious, I know, but I just want
the
to
very
say
fundamentals. Listen, the judiciary is not a department of government. It is the third arm of the government. You have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The judiciary is the third arm of government, not a department of the government. This thing is rocking the roots of the judiciary. If they play themselves, well, good luck.
All right, so let's move on very quickly to the final story for today from the I'll come to you for the analysis of this one. Rivers gubernatorial polls still in the news. Remember, there's a story we treated yesterday where the army was expressly alleged, or rather accused by the foreign observers, especially the UK, of interfering in the elections. But they've responded. The army said that they've warned that foreign governments should stop interfering in Nigeria's domestic issues, describing the statements that was credited to the United Kingdom that accused the military of undue involvement in the governorship elections, especially in Rivers State. They said it's baseless, untrue, and capable of misleading unsuspecting members of the public. Cheta, earlier on, you made allusions to the fact that there are some military people who are dressed in camouflage, but they were camouflage devoid of name tags, and these issues have been raised over and over again. But the army is saying they're carrying out investigations, but the UK should stop making baseless accusations. Your thoughts?
That's something of when there's a bowl of milk and you ask the cat to watch it, and then the milk disappears. Do you ask the cat to investigate how the milk disappeared?
You check the cat's mouth to see traces of milk.
Whatever. I think that this statement is pretty rich, coming from an army that is the largest importer of arms in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, the truth is we need these foreigners because we collect a lot of aid from them. And simple and short, I mean, they pay for a lot of our government services.
Yeah, but does that make everything said true coming from them?
They had observers on the ground. I mean, for example, the SDN, which funded by USAID and DFID, has a heavy presence in the Niger Delta. They reported a lot of military activity in the region. So, and these guys, they do their work is generally impeccable. See, the truth is, again, in Rivers, we tracked 48 separate and verified incidents on both election days, which led to the deaths of 24 people. The Rivers State has the highest number of casualties after Borno. And Borno's case, the two attacks in Borno that claimed victims were Boko Haram. The Borno is in a state of insurgency. So what is happening in Rivers? What's so special about Rivers that you have such high military presence there? And most of these, I mean, you have, Abonema as an example.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's just that we've been unable to verify, because I told my guy, man, get the hell out of there. That's C.
Language, please.
Get out of there. That's C. Because there was an incident, or there were incidents on the day of presidential election. We were able to verify 3 people killed. The people in the village claimed that there were up to 10.
Okay.
Days after the elections, they kept saying that bodies were being found. And then I think on the Wednesday or Thursday after that, some silly person went to attack soldiers and they killed a soldier. The next thing, a refugee wave. People started running out of Abonema. As in, seriously, it's a problem.
But you from your analysis, Cheta, because time is fast spent. I mean, you make it seem as though the foreign observers are devoid of any error whatsoever, just because they are foreign.
I'd like to weigh in on that.
It's
Very
not
quickly,
just
Justin.
because they're foreign.
I'd like to weigh in on that. You see, first off, in international politics, no actor is altruistic. Everybody has an agenda. So we must recognize the fact, first of all, that anybody who's paying attention to what you're doing is not doing so out of
Love for
quote
you.
unquote, right? They have interest.
Vested
number one.
interest.
Yes. Number two, I do agree that there's too much meddling from the international community sometimes in African affairs.
Yeah.
But having said that, the army is not in a position to be making what should be left, statements that should be left to diplomats to make. That's my opinion. The Foreign Affairs Ministry should handle that, and the army should stay in their khakis and in their boots and do their job. They are
We
to be
also need
seen,
to
not
talk about
heard.
the militarization of this election because it's
That
a
has
big
that was
problem.
That has
that
been
was
debated
we
extensively
spoke
and
about
understood.
it, yes, and NBA released a report as well, so not just the foreign observers but even the Nigerian Bar Association.
Well, I was not in town yesterday.
Well,
so I didn't hear.
thank you, Cheta. We'll invite you for the next meeting. Well, thank you for stepping in this morning, Cheta. You can find him on social media, on Twitter precisely at Chickster, CHXTA, at Justin Ijeh. It's just by the same name. The handle is at Justin Ijeh. Lagos, join us next in 40 minutes where we talk entertainment, looking at the other exciting side of life. It's still smooth, 98.1.